Now in recent years, open world games have become bigger and bigger, but they've also grown in popularity quite a bit. But many players and critics have noticed a trend toward open world games feeling empty and kind of lacking in soul, even though the time to beat a game is oftentimes set to a couple of dozen hours. But now, why the heck is that? I mean, when we heard that an open world game was coming out, we were excited. We wanted to explore a virtual world that we haven't seen yet, and the open worlds of many games didn't disappoint at all. But after 500 times of looting a chest with weak loot, or saving some random NPC for the 100th time that doesn't do anything for the story, starts to feel very boring. And now this happens to more and more games. I mean, the Ubisoft games in recent years have been a perfect example. Just think of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The first couple of hours, I mean, this huge open world. You know, you have Norway, which is beautiful, you have England, which is absolutely stunning, and has so much potential. However, after 10-20 hours, it feels as like you have seen it all. It feels like all the content and all the new places that you see is kind of generated, you know, there's no heart put in it. There are almost no Easter eggs, and a lot of places look very similar to one another. And you know, there are some games that I sometimes play only because of the open world. I only open them not because I want to replay the story or not because I want to meet the characters again. It's only because I want to explore the open world in the specific game. And if we are talking about Assassin's Creed, for example, I had the same feeling with Assassin's Creed Unity. I mean, for me, Paris was the perfect world. I mean, it wasn't really an open world. Paris itself was huge. You had so much to explore and so many different corners and Easter eggs that you haven't seen. Or Rome from Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, for example. I mean, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is probably like 10-15 times bigger, but I still come back to those games because the open worlds are so great. And the big problem is that they fill it with a lot of interesting things to do. Like if you have an open world, like Valhalla, for example, how are you supposed to fill such a huge area with interesting quests, with interesting characters, or with interesting places? I mean, at some point you simply run out of ideas. I mean, there are games like The Witcher 3, for example, or Red Dead Redemption 2 that made a phenomenal job and are one of my favorite open worlds of all time. And I mean, they filled the open world with so many Easter eggs and so many quests that even though were side quests, but were still better than most of the main quests in other games. And you know, after 5 hours of exploring the game and exploring the open world, you felt like you have seen something. However, after 5 hours of exploring in other modern open world games, you kind of feel like you did nothing. Like you didn't meet any interesting characters, you haven't seen any interesting places, and the loot that you got by doing some stupid things isn't even worth mentioning. It's just way worse than the inventory you already have. Now the problem that arises now is me as a player, for example, and I bet a lot of you too, when you buy a game for $60, you want to do everything that's possible in the game. Like when I play an open world RPG, like in most games, I try to complete every single side quest, I try to complete every question mark, because I don't want to leave any content behind. And I don't want to miss any quest because maybe out of the 10 that you do, one is really interesting and really resonates with you. And in those games, really most of the playtime that you have is by exploring the world or doing side quests, because the main quests are mostly like 20-30 hours, however you spend 70-80 hours in those games. So now, what can video game studios make better? My recommendation is very simple. Minimize the size of the map and increase the quality of the things in the map. I mean, instead of having 4 question marks, try to build one with an interesting story and interesting characters. Or instead of having hundreds of meters that almost feel like generated, shrink them down to 100 meters and put something interesting in there. Maybe a castle that players see from a distance and can explore. Because I think that developers are choosing to make their open worlds more on quantity than on quality. And I think at some point in time, we need to go back to quality over quantity for open worlds. And I mean, I think that's also a part why Elden Ring was so successful. Because I mean, in this world, you had so many secrets and so many places that you didn't expect at all to find. And it was just so refreshing from the usual Ubisoft formula, where all the open worlds feel kinda same. And I'm very pleased to see that some developers are going more into that direction. Like Assassin's Creed Mirage, for example, is said to be more like the old school Assassin's Creed games. It's not gonna be a huge open world, it's gonna be a big city that we will be able to explore, which I'm very excited for. And I hope that games like that will be a success, because that way the developers will be able to see that we players want to play those games and that it's also lucrative for them. Alright guys, that was it from today's video. That's just a little input from me. Tell me in the comments if you feel the same about open world games nowadays. And yeah, that was it from me guys. I hope you have an amazing day and I'll see you in the next one.